Happy belated Valentine's Day, everyone. Real quickly before we dive into anything, I want to share a couple things with you guys. So first, I do apologize if today I kind of sound like I have low energy or if I sound sad. It's been a long couple weeks and mentally and physically I'm very exhausted, but I want to try and get back into a routine and I want to try and fill you guys in on sort of what's been going on. So the reason that I was unable to do my show last week, is so as some of you guys know, I have secondary adrenal insufficiency after my surgery for Cushing's disease. And when I have things that are out of my ordinary day-to-day activity, sometimes if I don't adjust my medication enough, I can have like an adrenal crisis or I can go low, and it can cause symptoms of adrenal insufficiency like nausea, headaches, severe fatigue. For me, I have like really bad trouble staying awake, vomiting, crying spells, low blood pressure, tachycardia, high blood pressure. You can really swing either way. It depends on your body. Anyway, so I had a medical procedure a few days before I was supposed to post my last episode. And not only did I misjudge the amount of hydrocortisone I would need, so I spent a few days being low and just feeling absolutely horrendous, but I also got some news from the procedure that I had done, and it just mentally, it's just another thing that I have to deal with, and it's been rough. But basically, what I had done is I had an endoscopy because I have a long-standing history of stomach pain, and for a while, they thought it was linked to my Cushing's disease, which most of it was, because I did get a little bit of relief after I was treated for my Cushing's disease, but it still was there. It still was lingering. So they wanted to give me an endoscopy because I hadn't had one done in, like, over a decade, and they wanted to see if there were any ulcers or anything from the medication that I was taking, or really if I had anything else going on that they could see that would explain why I was in pain so much of the time. So I had my endoscopy. They didn't see anything to the naked eye, like, they looked and my stomach looked okay, but they took some biopsies anyway because they just, wanted to be safe. Well, the biopsies that they took revealed that I do have more than likely, a rare form of gastritis, which is autoimmune gastritis, which would make sense because, I mean, after hearing about that and then after doing a little research online, I do have a lot of the risk factors that can go into that, so it made sense. So I still have to be further worked up for that, but that's looking I have to have some blood tests and stuff, but that's looking like what is going on and why I have so much stomach pain. So my stomach is basically just attacking itself. And it's just been a nightmare. I mean, on one hand, like, I'm thankful, that I know what's going on now and that that I can come up with a plan with my doctors to, help treat it and hopefully, get relief again, like I did for those couple years that I was gluten and dairy free. And that's probably going to be the solution. I'm probably going to have to go back to eating gluten and dairy free. It's a lot. Um, it's a lot, especially when you're fatigued to, prepare all those meals and do all that meal planning and thinking ahead in case you wanna go out to eat or if you have to go out at all for the day and you have to take some food with you. It's a lot of planning and it's a lot of just okay, enough of my rant. So this week we're gonna be talking about something that almost every single person with a chronic illness goes through before they finally get diagnosed. It's like a twisted, annoying rite of passage, but being misdiagnosed. So, misdiagnosis is a very rampant problem and one that can have detrimental, sometimes irreversible effects on you. And the longer you go misdiagnosed, the more time that your true disease has that it can damage your body. So, it's key to make sure that you are doing everything in your power to be proactive in regards to this. And in order to help you with that, I've outlined some of the most common reasons that can contribute to misdiagnosis, as well as, just general steps that you can take to make sure that you and your doctor are working together to get you the proper diagnosis. So the first thing is that your doctor isn't giving you a visual diagnosis. So anytime they give you a visual diagnosis, you're going to want to question it a lot. An official diagnosis is usually made by a combination of labs, symptoms, family history, imaging, or, other types of testing. And you cannot diagnose someone simply by looking at them. So, for example, if you tell your doctor that you have trouble losing weight, that you're tired or fatigued all the time, that you have hair loss, and they look at you and tell you, okay, well, you have PCOS, or it sounds like you have PCOS, but then they don't do any labs and they start just trying to treat you for it, or they try and get you on medication, or they refer you to a dietitian or something like that. It's terrifying that they even have a medical license because there are steps to take when you're giving a patient a diagnosis. And skipping those steps and just automatically assuming that's what they have happens more often than you would think. And it's irresponsible and it's not something that you should be accepting. They can't rule out other similar conditions and make sure you're being properly treated if they don't back up the diagnosis they're giving you with lab work, imaging, testing, whatever is required to get that diagnosis. And what's even more concerning is when they go ahead and start prescribing medication for presumed issues before it's even confirmed. Um, and this happens to a shocking amount of people I've met in the chronic illness community. It even happened to myself at one point. And it seems like it's just becoming more popular to take a guessing approach to the diagnosis and treatment versus, actually doing the legwork and running the tests and backing up the diagnosis with medical evidence. So ensure that before you accept a diagnosis and you begin treatment, that your doctor has taken the correct steps to properly diagnose you. The second thing you can do is ensure you meet the diagnostic criteria for the diagnosis that you've been given. So make sure that you match that diagnostic criteria for the disease you've been diagnosed with by researching it to see if there are any specific labs or tests that are needed to confirm that diagnosis. If you don't meet those requirements, you're going to want to follow up with your doctor about having confirmatory testing done. And if you have confirmatory tests and they come back negative or inconclusive, revisit your doctor for continued testing. Don't let them discourage you, and be sure and keep fighting for yourself, because oftentimes in that scenario, if they go, okay, well, you check off, 60% of the boxes for this illness, that's probably what you have, but they don't rule out other things, you're going to want to make sure that the diagnosis that they're giving you is something that you definitely meet the criteria for to be diagnosed. The third thing you can do is you can ask for a differential diagnosis. And a differential diagnosis is the process of differentiating between two or more conditions which share similar signs or symptoms. So under this big umbrella of, all the possible diseases, you can ask your doctor how they ruled out other diseases that closely match or mimic what they diagnosed you with. Because if their answer is that they haven't, then it's your right to get the full workup and make sure that other conditions that are easily confused with what they diagnosed you with are ruled out. Now, the fourth thing that you can do is you're going to want to make sure that you describe your symptoms correctly. This is going to sound like it's pretty common knowledge or common sense, but you would be surprised at the slight difference in terminology that patients use to describe their symptoms that can actually affect how the doctor is interpreting that patient's symptoms. For example, sometimes people will see the room spinning and tell their doctor that they're dizzy or lightheaded, but that visual spinning sensation specifically is vertigo. These are subtle differences, but they can have large impacts when your doctor starts investigating possible causes for your symptoms. So ensure that the descriptions you're giving them best match your symptoms. If you're not sure and you kind of have to look up or research that symptom to figure out the best way for you to articulate that to your doctor, definitely go ahead and take the time to do that. Be as specific as possible when describing your symptoms. So, for example, if you're experiencing chronic abdominal pain, is it sharp pain? Is it dull? Is it constant? Is it intermittent? Because each of these things can have a different place that your doctor might start brainstorming with what's going on. So make sure that you're being as thorough as possible with your descriptions and with the information that you're giving to your doctor. Sometimes your doctor will not follow up with these questions during your appointment. So never leave these things up in the air in your doctor's hands. Make sure that you are going out of your way to give them this information during your appointment. That way you know that you're doing everything in your power to make sure that they have all the information necessary to properly diagnose and treat you. And number 5 is get a second opinion. Even if you believe what your doctor is telling you and you think that they're on the right track, you can still get a second opinion just to make sure that, there aren't other possibilities that are being missed. And having that fresh set of eyes, it never hurts. Always get a second opinion if something just doesn't feel right about the diagnosis you're given or if you don't agree with the diagnosis you're given. But like I said, even if you do agree, it's still okay to get a second opinion because that second doctor might not arrive at the same conclusion. The sixth thing I want to go over is kind of a red flag. It's going to be if your treatment isn't working. So, if you've already been diagnosed, but the treatment isn't working to ease or resolve your symptoms, one possibility for that, apart from maybe you not being compatible with that medication or that treatment plan, could be that you have a different disease than what you were diagnosed with. Therefore, you would need a different treatment plan than the one you've been offered. So, if you've been receiving treatment and it doesn't seem to be compatible with your body or it's not helping you, and you had any doubts during your diagnostic process or you question or doubt your diagnosis, definitely go back and follow up with your doctor because sometimes that can be why you're not getting symptom relief. And the last thing that can help you avoid misdiagnosis is to ensure that the right questions are being asked. And when I say that, I mean that insight into your medical condition is not solely limited to your symptoms. And sometimes your doctor may forget to wander outside of that box, and several things can help narrow down what is going on with you. A few questions that you should make sure that they're asking are things like, have they considered external or environmental factors and how those may affect your symptoms? Does anything make your symptoms better or worse? Have they explored your family history of medical conditions? So, for example, if your mother had ovarian cancer, but they don't know that, and you're experiencing symptoms that may match that, that's an important piece to the puzzle that they would need to consider that in your diagnosis and to rule that out or to confirm it. You're going to want to see if they confirmed a timeline. So, if you've had this issue for 15 years, but your doctor is under the impression that your symptoms just began, the month before or when you decided to schedule an appointment to see them, this is a big disconnect that may influence what diseases they consider when exploring a possible diagnosis. So, you're going to want to make sure that your doctor has an accurate timeline. Being misdiagnosed is extremely upsetting, to say the least. You wind up with delayed or complete lack of care. You suffer longer than necessary. You can experience irreversible damage because it wasn't caught as early as it could have been. It's just all around devastating. And you need to remember that you are not the problem and misdiagnosis is not your fault. So, taking the steps above can help give you the best chance at preventing yourself from winding up in this situation if you're dealing with a doctor that is difficult or might seem indifferent during your appointments. If you enjoyed tonight's show, please feel free to subscribe and share. Now, your financial status dictates a lot of things in this world, but it shouldn't dictate your ability to get help, especially when it comes to something as important as your health. So, all the documents and resources listed on my website are free. If you'd like to donate, though, I do have a donations tab on my website. No amount is too small. If you're unable to donate, just know that I still find infinite value in your support, and I thank you for being here. Keep fighting, my beautiful souls. Until next time.